3 powerful letters to give new meaning to substandard living conditions, representing a time many veterans wish they could erase from their minds.
Well, tonight in an exclusive ABC News 4 Extra, a look inside the diary of a World War II airman. Here again, once again, is Sarah DeMarco introducing us to a Charleston County deputy carrying on the legacy that his grandfather left behind.
It won't be a typical ride for Deputy Chris Wells, getting a first-hand look into his past.
Proud to be the person I turned out to be, and he's got a lot to do with it.
Wells and fellow law enforcement officers hit the road last week. Destination Savannah and its mighty 8th Air Force Museum. The reason for the trip?
I think that would mean a lot to him. I know it means a lot to my dad and me.
Wells, who spent 4 years in the Air Force, is third-generation military. His dad, an Army man, and Grandpa, a nose gunner in the 15th Air Force 454th Heavy Bombardment Group based out of Charleston.
It really helped me understand what our family went through.
And on this day, the day-long trip, a tribute.
We don't do that enough. We are so preoccupied with our own lives and our own situations that we don't really think about the fact that we are free and able to do that because people have dedicated themselves and sacrificed to keep that freedom.
Chris's grandfather, a man of very few words, but what Horace Wells didn't say out loud, he wrote down.
I remember looking at it, at the diary, and I was like, you know, this was in Germany in a prisoner of war camp that my grandfather kept. You know, it gives you chills just thinking about it, you know.
Mr. Wells's diary, an account of the 374 days he spent as a prisoner of war.
The only thing he would say was he was a prisoner of war. He wouldn't say how it happened or what he experienced or anything. Once
tucked away in a drawer, a delicate piece of history now to be preserved in a military museum.
Sub-zero weather, substandard clothing, malnutrition, and people, anything extra they had, they were just tossing off to the side of the road because it became such a burden to carry. And my dad just kept the diary and I don't think I would have been carrying any extra weight along the way, but he just wanted to hold on to that, so I'm certainly glad he did.
The drawing, the phrase, a first-hand account of the day Wells's B-24 was shot out of the sky over Yugoslavia.
You know, I've seen some stuff being a police officer that scared me, but not near as much as I guarantee you what my grandfather went through. Being shot down and then being taken as a prisoner of war and experiencing that for as long as he was over there. Yeah, I would never want to have to deal with that, ever.
Horace Wells was stationed at Stalag Luft 3 for almost a year. There he stayed in living quarters like this with triple-decker bunk beds, wooden tables, and a small coal stove used for heating the minimal amounts of food he received. A family heirloom, a part of U.S. war history, passed from one generation to another, leaving a lasting legacy for all to see.
And I think it was extra special to me to have my son
It was a very touching moment.
Mm-hmm. And to have my son bring it down, and what he's done with his job and stuff like that, and it just seemed very special to me to have it treated like that.
In Savannah, Sarah DeMarco, ABC News 4.
Horace Wells was liberated April 29, 1945. And tomorrow night at 6 o'clock, the story of another airman still living to give his own account of life as a prisoner of war. It is not uncommon for men of war to keep their stories to themselves.
But one man's words are now helping others understand an experience many of us will never have to face. Tonight in an ABC News 4 exclusive, Sarah DeMarco introduces us to a man who jumped out of an exploding bomber and lived to talk about it.
He talks about it without trepidation.
That is the ME-109, a model of an ME-109, which is 3 of those shot my bomber down.
describes it so clearly, it seems like yesterday.
The day I was shot down, I was bombing the railroad yard in Budapest, Hungary.
62 years later, it still brings him to tears.
And all the Germans that where we'd come through before marching as POWs and being hated by the Germans, they all had white flags hanging out the window.
Herman Cranman set out to put his experience on just a couple of pages. He finished at 280.
You can't explain everything that occurred. You can't even come close to it.
Cranman flew in a B-24 just like this one. He actually sat at the seat in the front of the plane where he could see just about any and everything coming towards the bomber. He needed 50 completed missions before he could return home, but he was shot down on his 34th.
Probably one of the worst moments of my life. Hanging there, and that you leave an airplane that's making all this noise, 4 engines blasting away, and wind rushing through you, and all of a sudden you're hanging in a parachute in this perfect quiet, not a sound anywhere, and you're swinging back and forth on the cords of the parachute, and it's an eerie feeling.
One brush with death led to another. He now faced the enemy face to face as a POW. The war for Cranman was just beginning.
We headed out in the middle of the night in the teeth of a blizzard, sub-zero blizzard, very cold. All 10,000 of us.
A chill he would feel for 289 days. Freedom came April 29th, 1945.
And I saw a line of GI trucks. There must have been 1,000 of them. That was joy in itself.
Tears of joy, a painting of despair captured by his wife, now hanging in Savannah's Military Museum. In Savannah, Sarah DeMarco, ABC News 4.
And Mr. Cranman resides in Savannah with his wife. Coming up tomorrow at 6 o'clock, how similar Mr. Cranman's war story is to that of the airmen we introduced you to last night. How the two survived the same death march. That's tomorrow at 6.
Tennessee.
Earlier this week, we introduced you to 2 POW survivors.
And tonight, 50 years later, the family of Horace Wells and Herman Cranman finally meet. What's more, Sarah DeMarco tells us in this ABC News 4 Extra how the 2 airmen, well, they may have crossed paths years before.
Both in the 15th Air Force, both bombing Southern Europe, both shot out of the sky and survived.
I escaped an exploding bomber, blew up after I jumped out, and hanging there over enemy territories is very difficult to contemplate.
The day he went down, July 14th, 1944, over Hungary.
Did he do
3 months earlier, Horace Wells bailed out of his burning B-24 over Germany.
Just to think about, what he experienced, flying mission after mission after mission, and then, the fear and terror he probably went through when they got shot down and got held captive. Oh my gosh.
Mr. Wells didn't talk about his experience. He let his drawings do the talking.
Over 40 years, he might have said 100 words about what happened. And for me to question him and try and get any information, it was just very difficult. He just was such a modest person.
It wasn't until Robert Wells read Herman Cranman's book detailing his own experience during the war that Wells began to really understand what his father went through as a POW. Wells found so many similarities between his father's diary and Cranman's personal accounts, he began to question if the two knew each other.
So I would go to the diary and I would read a passage in the book and I would say, I think I've seen that. And I would go to the diary and I would look it up, and it was really surreal how close everything matched.
More than 30 matches. The two were 2 buildings apart at Stalag Luft 3. The two documented the same things, the same pies made of rations, the same prison camp slang, the same march.
Everything just basically matched at the point of the march, and my father apparently was about half an hour behind Herman in the column when they were being marched from one prison camp to the other.
A meeting of 2 men barely missed, leading to a meeting generations in the making.
I brought back some some memories. You can't say fond memories of POW life, but it's memories that of an experience that you've had that you don't want to take again, but it's one that you gain a lot from.
One making this Wells proud to serve his country, knowing what his grandfather endured.
The freedoms that we have today, that we don't have to live like the Iraqi people and people in other countries that don't have the freedoms that we have. My grandfather has a lot to do with that, a lot to do with it. 2 men, 2 legacies, never too late to pass on. In Savannah, Sarah DeMarco, ABC News 4.
And that diary is being preserved in the archive room of Savannah's mighty 8th Air Force Museum. It is available by request. And if you'd like some more information on the museum as well as Cranman's book, just log on to our website. That is www.abcnews4.
And a programming